Hello, and thank you all for joining us for today's program. My name is Emily Santanum, and I was a former Ann Ray intern at the School for Advanced Research from 2020 to 2021. Currently, I hold the position of curatorial assistant at the Harwood Museum of Art, where I'm currently hosting this webinar. Our museum is located less than 5 miles from the Taos Pueblo in northern New Mexico. We acknowledge the occupied indigenous land we call Taos as the unceded ancestral territories of the Pueblo, Dene, and Apache peoples. We honor the Pueblo people's committed stewardship of and sovereignty on this land. We stand in solidarity with indigenous peoples' movements and are committed to supporting indigenous-led solutions and organizations in our community and worldwide. This program was organized by the School for Advanced Research in partnership with the Objects of Art 2021 Antique American Indian Arts Show. I want to thank Kim Martindale and his team for their ongoing support of SAR. As an organization that has the honor of stewarding a collection of over 12,000 works of Native American art, with pieces spanning the 6th century to today, the staff at SAR work closely and collaboratively with Indigenous communities, helping to empower and educate collectors as well as emerging artists. Both SAR and Objects of Art share this dedication to ethical stewardship. Before we get started, just a few notes on logistics. Jordan and Craig will join us in a moment and we'll talk for 35 minutes. After her presentation, we welcome your questions. I'll be sharing the questions with Jordan, so you can enter any comments or questions in the little Q&A section of the Zoom webinar. And for those of you who are not yet members of the School for Advanced Research, we would love for you to join. You can see the chat for a link to our virtual membership information. For only $25 a year, you can take part in all of our online programming like this one and receive access to members-only events and more. Now for the good part, let me introduce you to today's speaker. Jordan Ann Craig is a Northern Cheyenne artist born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. She received her Bachelor of Arts from Dartmouth College. Her work includes painting, prints, collages, textile prints, and artist books. In 2017, Jordan was awarded the H. Allen Brooks Traveling Fellowship, as well as the Eric and Barbara Dobkin Fellowship at the School for Advanced Research. In 2019, Jordan was an artist in residence at the Institute for American Indian Arts, as well as the Roswell Artist in Residence program. Currently, she is painting and printing here in New Mexico. SAR supports 3 Native Artist Fellows annually. Jordan is one of over 80 artists who have come through the program. As she will talk about, the time and space that the fellowships allow can be transformative for artists. If you're interested in supporting this program or would just like to learn more about it, you can visit SAR's website. And before Jordan begins, I'd like to welcome Kim Martindale, who is a co-producer of the Antique American Indian Arts Show, and he will say a few words now.
It's so great to be here, and thank you, Emily, for bringing me on just for a moment. I know everyone's looking forward to hearing Jordan as well as I am. I just wanted to say it's such an honor and privilege to work with SAR over the years. I think we've been working together for about 8 years now. SAR has a gem of a collection. If you are in Santa Fe, you must go see it. And please become a member of SAR. It's a very worthwhile organization. Emily just went over many of the great, wonderful points and things that SAR does during the year. So it's not just during this moment, which is a great moment in Santa Fe with all of Indian Market coming up in 2 days and artists coming in from all over the world. So it's a wonderful time to be here in Santa Fe, but any time of the year that you come to Santa Fe, please visit the collections at SAR. Jordan, I look forward to hearing what you have to say. Thank you so much, Emily, and thank you, SAR.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Kim and Emily, for that intro. I'm honored to be here. And yeah, with SAR at the SAR campus right now. And I will go ahead and share a presentation with you guys, basically talking about my background, my career, and how I got to where I am right now. Okay. All right, this is my studio in Roswell. So to start my presentation, it's a nice film photograph of one of my favorite studios. Okay, so I'm gonna first talk about my family. I was born and raised in the San Francisco Bay Area, so born San Jose, California, and then we moved to East Bay when I was 1 year old. Here's me and my younger sister Madison drawing in our living room. Art had always been a big part of my upbringing. My parents made a great effort to have art supplies and art lessons and just paper and pencils around for us to explore the arts from a very young age. This is in second grade when I won an award for this nice abstracted little lady. So ever since preschool and beyond, I had been making art, not really talking, but like making a lot of work. And that's how I got started. This is my mom, Bridget Johnson. She is Northern Cheyenne and born and raised in Montana. This is her in like second grade-ish, wearing her favorite knitted yellow sweater. And here's my mom and dad camping in California. I now own that sweatshirt that my dad is wearing. And my father is Eastern European descent, also from California, also from Montana. He is born and raised in Livingston, and my mom grew up in Livingston as well. Here are my beautiful sisters. That's Bailey in the purple and Madison with the blue background. I'm the oldest and Maddie's second, and then Bailey's the baby. So I wound up making art in college. I did not know what I was gonna do, but I went in undeclared and took an art class every single term at Dartmouth. And I just wanted to share some of this like absurdly black and white abstract work before I share what I do now. But this was what was intriguing me: monoprinting, collage, these abstracted, atmospheric black and white prints. Here's an installation shot with some nice dramatic lighting. A detail shot. So this piece was called When I Close My Eyes, and it was part of my senior thesis show. So really different, really, I love this body work. I still really stand by it, but I could also see how lost and how I had no idea what I was doing still. And at college, I was really lucky that they had a book arts program. So I made artist books, and that was a really great way to make my work. I made so much work, so putting it all in one bound piece made a lot of sense. Here's my honors thesis. After college, I got an internship with the college to be an art intern. And right after that, I had my first bigger show, part of the college. It was an award and called the Pod Award. And so, yeah, I had a big deadline to make a bunch of work. And this is when I started doing my dot paintings, which I still do today. I was really inspired by an Aboriginal art show that went up at the college, and I just could not get dots out of my head. And I still think and work in dots constantly. This is a dot painting I made. I think this is 2016. And this is a map of Livingston, Montana, where my parents both grew up. And then I just started making weird things. So that leads me to when I went to Europe and printed in California as well. So I really took on printmaking right after college. And I printed at Kala Art Institute, made woodcuts, I made monoprints, screen prints. I started learning and working more with graphic design and just really black and white graphic prints, political prints. Making work that was symbolic and meaningful, but also just really different than anything I'd ever made. I went to Venice, Italy, and I did cyanotype and made these constellations with glass beads. I taught myself how to textile print in Amsterdam. That was quite exciting. And I'll get to this pattern very soon because this is from my studies at SAR, as well as this one too. This piece is about fertility. And so is this one. This is a risograph that I made into a wallpaper and installed it in this little gallery in Amsterdam, and then took a film photo of it. So very layered. And here is another book I created, also part of that fellowship. And I basically made a wallpaper sample book with all the patterns I created at SAR. More textile printing. So these were screen prints that I printed directly onto the fabric itself. So that brings me right after all that printmaking, actually in the middle of it, I got my fellowship to work at the School for Advanced Research. And after years of not painting, little did they know, I got to paint for the first time since college, and made work that really changed my whole life and my career and how I think about art today. So I got to work in the collections at the IARC and study with the interns and touch the pots and be there. And I got to first see the collection with my mom, and we were just blown away. It was our first time in Santa Fe, first time studying Pueblo pottery, and it's very breathtaking. I second Kim, you have to come out here and see this collection. And then I started working graphically, digitally, rendering my own designs based off of little bits of the pottery I was looking at. And I would take maybe one little part of the rim and then repeat it over and over again, or look at an overall piece and make it into my own painting. So it's really like, I like to think of it how people study master copies of art. Like I had to paint a Picasso or a Rembrandt in drawing class or paint class. So these were like studying master art pieces and then reinterpreting them. My mom came out to help me sand and prep my paintings. She learned it was really hard labor, so I think that like she lasted 5 minutes, but the prep for my paintings is really important. Just like pottery, actually, I was wet sanding and making the surface as smooth as possible. If these people making these water jars are creating a beautiful 3D object and then sanding it meticulously, I felt like I could sand, you know, a 2D object easily, but it's definitely not easy. It's a lot of work. I think I sand my canvas at least 6 to 8 times before I do any painting. So this is when I actually borrowed the SAR projector and I projected the digital designs to the canvas. I've retired this method of working because it's not precise enough anymore, but it worked really well when I first was learning this process of hard-edged painting. Here is one of my favorite little water jars in the collection. And I was mostly looking at this mountain shape, and it's abstract, it's meant to be that way, and I saw it as a tooth. And so I really like the flowers and the cute bird with the cute eye, but I decided to focus on this really harsh physical tooth-like mountain shape and repeat it in my own pattern. So here's me taping it up onto the canvas. Here's a little shot before the dark paint goes on. The left is the digital rendering and the right is the painting itself. And you could see this painting at the School for Advanced Research because it lives in the permanent collection here now. This was a really challenging painting for me because I had to restart it like 4 times, but one of my favorites. It's very simple, but yeah, effective. Here's another painting that you could find at La Fonda by the elevator. And on my laptop, you could see the digital rendering. And then to the right, you could see the finished painting in my SAR studio. This painting's titled New Home. And And it's based off of an Acoma water jar, which I fell in love with, my favorite pot in the whole collection. And I made one of my favorite paintings based off of this pot, using little tiny pieces of tape that I hand cut. I decided to also work on my dot series while I was at SAR. And I was really inspired by a lot of the earth and the ochre elements and the natural pigments that are found out here in New Mexico. So I decided to make paintings in those colors. And also inspired by the landscape, the plateaus, the ridges, the texture. I mean, it's one of a kind. And then I found this little jar in the collection that didn't have a maker, but it reminded me of the process of how I make these dot paintings and the texture. And I really love this piece. And I started seeing all these connections with the work based off of these incredible objects that came well before me. More dots. Pink dots. I came back to Santa Fe in 2019 for a fellowship at IAIA, where I painted for 5 weeks. But instead of studying from the IARC and studying Pueblo pottery, I decided to solely focus on Cheyenne and Northern Cheyenne beadwork. And I was studying mostly from various online collections, my favorite being the Plains Indian Museum in Cody, Wyoming. And this is a Northern Cheyenne beaded piece from that collection. And I made a painting of it. And studying from here, specifically my color palette, I think I only had to buy a few colored paints because everything is so monochromatic, cream and off-white and then like black and ochre and maybe burnt sienna. But this unloaded a whole new color palette in my work, and bright pinks and blues and teals and bright whites. So that was definitely a learning curve, was now working with color. Here's a little pouch. And Cheyenne is strongly rooted with horizontal bands of stripes. And I started wearing stripes. I started painting stripes. Everything is so stripey now. And that's what I still do, a lot of stripes. More stripes. Here's a digital mock-up from this last pouch. And here is my studio at the IAIA campus. And you can see some works in progress, and maybe they're starting to look familiar from some previous slides. I made a lot of paintings in 5 weeks here. I was nonstop. I took 1 day off. And after that, I think I went back home to live with my sisters in Oakland, California. And I miraculously got the Roswell Artist in Residence Fellowship, which is a year-long artist residency in Roswell, New Mexico, with a studio and a house. And so I moved to Roswell a few months later in 2019. And I just really started making even more vivid Cheyenne beaded paintings, pushing the paints, pushing the patterns, painting bigger, because I never had this much space before and this much time. It's truly called the gift of time residency for a reason, because you have a lot of it. And at the end of the residency, you are awarded a solo show at the Roswell Art Museum. And so here are 4 works from that exhibition. And here are some pouches that I was studying, and some moccasins, and baby carriers, and cradle boards, and just, yeah, everything in between. So the pandemic hit a few months into my residency, full on. My sister Bailey came and moved in with me and became my full-time artist assistant. And we made a lot of paintings. We watched a lot of TV. We, were in crazy times in Roswell, very far away from everyone else. including family and friends. Here Bailey is taping up the first painting I showed you in my presentation. This painting is called Colliding Clouds. It's based off of the crazy thunderstorms you see in New Mexico, especially in Roswell. The lights, the lighting sky, it's just, it's a show every night in the season. I adopted a dog in this time, so I figured I'd share Daisy. She's beautiful. So here's an example of some moccasins I was looking at, these white on white moccasins. I thought they were like the coolest design I'd ever seen. It's so clean, so fresh. And I decided to make a grid painting based off of the construction, the feel, and the overall motif of those moccasins, simplifying it down to its barest part, which is the grid, and using lots of little bands of tape to make the design work. This is called Fresh Like White Moccasins. And here's a final photograph of this painting. One of my favorites. And I really also love this quill work on these moccasins as well. And I also made a dot painting based off of those moccasins. So I really like looking at little parts of the designs and the objects, and then totally flipping them and making them my own, or emphasizing something like the grid or the structure of the beadwork in the paintings themselves. That photo was taken at like 4:30 in the morning when I finished this painting. This painting is called Lie Next to Me. And this painting is one of my last paintings I made in Roswell, which is at the Anderson Contemporary Art Museum in their permanent collection now. And it's based off a lithograph that I designed and printed, and then I decided to make a painting version. So for the first time, playing with transparency on top of looking at and studying Indigenous design. This one's titled, Are We Going to Kiss? There's a nice glamour shot of colliding clouds. So all of these paintings, they're based in these historical and contemporary objects with intent and purpose. And I make these paintings based off of these amazing objects. And then I have my own stories and narratives that go within each piece, whether it tells a little tiny story or reveals something kind of funny or embarrassing. Each painting has its own narrative and its own story within the piece. Very recently, I did my first mural in Menlo Park, California. I hired my two sisters. We went out and painted a 24-foot wide mural, painting it just the way I would paint my paintings. So here's a zoomed in shot. This is based off of a cradle board, really amping up the colors. And currently I am based in Pojoaque Valley, just north of Santa Fe. And that's me stretching a canvas in my little white studio. And that's the neighborhood, that's the Pojoaque River flowing right next door. And that's where I am now, making paintings. I am preparing for a solo show opening in London at October Gallery on December 1st this year. And I'm about to head off to Wyoming to do a residency at UCross in like 10 days. So it's a busy 2021 as I wrap up and gear up for these shows. And thank you so much for tuning in and watching a little bit about my practice and my work.
Hey, Jordan, thank you so much for that presentation. We didn't overlap at SAR, but I think it's pretty amazing that we're both able to study and learn from and just explore the collection there. And it's clear that it was so important to you and your artistic journey. And just a quick reminder before we jump into our questions here, if any of our viewers have questions or comments, you can go to the little more button at the bottom of your Zoom screen and just write them right into the Q&A box, and then we'll just be sure to address them along the way. I guess to get started, I mean, it's clear that you have been studying Indigenous design through beadwork and textile work, basket weavings, and then you move forward and kind of personalize those patterns. I'm curious how that research-based process has changed through the years, and also just what's been inspiring you recently.
Yeah, I mean, I think my process overall has not changed like dramatically. It's a lot of just like looking, and the thing is, because of the pandemic, I haven't been able to actually go to these collections much. So that'll be a really big change when I could actually start seeing these objects in person, because I think that'll really open up so many different ideas for my practice and my inspiration and my research, because a lot of the work is about the research, as you could see. And what's recently inspiring me, oh my goodness, well, it's kind of weird because I'm drawn to like really vivid colors, but also live in like a really, everything is brown and the sky is blue. So it's like, I'm really interested in also neutral browns, desert colors, but then I also do like hot pink too. So trying to find like a nice balance between those two color schemes, because it's been a little bit complicated. But yeah, I think my family's become and has been a big inspiration for my work, and my sisters, and both my sisters have recently moved in with me. So I think that has been just adjusting to them being around. I haven't been painting as much, but I'm sure that a lot of ideas will flow from this time together.
That's really incredible. Yeah, I was glad to hear that you ended up moving a little bit closer. And actually that dovetails into one of the questions from a viewer who's asking if you're showing your work or are planning to show your work there in Santa Fe.
I'm not sure yet. I think potentially, yeah, if I find the right place to present my work. Right now, I am just working with this one gallery in London, and yeah, I think it's kind of nice to hide away and just paint here. So I think one day I would love to show my work here when I feel ready. But right now I'm just like hiding and painting.
Sure. Yeah, actually, so I was doing a bit of research on you, and it looks like you've had artist fellowships, not just in the States, but like you were saying, abroad as well, in places like Italy and Ireland, the Netherlands, and the UK. So I was wondering how studying in print shops abroad differed to sort of diving into really intricate research in collections here in the States, and sort of how you bring those really supposedly disparate inspirations together in your work.
I think it was really eye-opening, especially being in Amsterdam, where like design is so fundamental to how the Dutch live. And just working with all these young graphic designers and like these people that are really pushing what art means and what design means. So I started like printing some of these patterns that were very like neutral and making them like pop of red, almost red, orange, and white, and colors that I was seeing around the city. And almost, yeah, very inspired by my surroundings. And because I am like my ancestry, I have European ancestry. My father's like blonde hair, blue-eyed white man. Going and seeing, you know, that part of my background too, and also like in my everyday life, mixing these two cultures and these two backgrounds has been something that has been not only challenging, but also just, yeah, complex, even just in everyday living. So going there and being there and printing amongst all these designers, that was really, I learned a lot, and it was interesting. And bringing these designs that I studied at SAR and bringing them and printing them on fabric in Amsterdam was really cool. And people had a lot of questions about them, and it was, yeah, it was a really great experience. And I got to print in Cork, Ireland, and that was one of my favorite places I've ever made art to this day. Just the people in the community in the art world, especially the printmaking world out there, were really inspiring, and I really would like to go back So that was really cool to have a lot of tea and sit down, and people were so respectful and had a lot of really great questions and interactions. So that was a really inspiring place to make work too.
Yeah, I guess so. Even like besides the people or the design history and culture in those places, did you feel like the landscape kind of shifted your color palettes or your themes?
Definitely in Amsterdam. It was there in the summer. It was really beautiful. It was super hot. I was biking everywhere. So the work was just really like bold and fun. I made a big book. I made lots of textile prints. I made works on paper. And that was my first stop right after SAR. Like I literally like flew home for 2 days and then flew out. So that was really crazy timing. So fresh from Santa Fe to Amsterdam was pretty crazy. And I like to like, when I did my fellowships, I like had all these different modes of transportation. So like in New Mexico, you have to drive everywhere, obviously. Amsterdam, you biked. London, I took the tube. Ireland, walking. I walked everywhere, up so many hills. And gosh, we're at London. Yeah, I think that's my whole fellowship. Biking in Amsterdam. So it's just kind of interesting because that also like determined how I can make my work, because I couldn't like haul things on my bike. I had to be able to like pack according to my transportation methods, and also work a lot smaller when I was away so I can come back. But SAR, I painted really big, which was really nice.
Mm-hmm. And was that one of the first times that you started sort of expanding your canvases and going large scale?
Oh yeah, I would say so. I mean, I did paint some big things in college, but college was like so much about the fundamentals of paint and color. And I did so many like still lives, and gosh, we studied from the figure, very fundamental work. And it wasn't until like maybe my senior thesis and my solo exhibition after that, or my group exhibition after that I started really thinking about content and why am I making work? Because what I was making, as you saw, it's kind of fun to me now, but it would never have lasted if I kept making art, because it had no real value to me. And now I'm making work that is so important to me and my family and my culture, and like overall it's a study, and it's a lot more important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's kind of timely that you started talking about your experience in college, because one of our questions from Ann Morton is how psychology and your psychology studies at Dartmouth dovetail into your work or tie into your work somehow.
Like, can you please repeat that? Sorry, it cut out for a second.
Oh, sure, that's fine. No, my Wi-Fi is also a little bit spotty. Yeah, do you see your studies with psychology sort of playing into or inspiring some of the artistic practice that you have?
I mean, I would like to say so. my psychological brain sciences degree. I mean, I was so interested in like color and the psychology of color for sure, and also like behavioral psychology. And I think it like maybe psychologically had an impact on my work. But I would say so. Yeah, just overall, it has had an impact. I don't know if it's like explicit, but it's like it's there.
The degree was still important to get, for sure.
I need my general ed credits.
Well, I guess in sort of talking back about how you reinterpret historic works and how you can expand these really tiny, intricate details and abstract them into your large scale paintings, I was just kind of curious what you enjoy about that process of translation. Like how and why does it speak to you in that way?
That's a good question. What am I doing with my life? Yeah, translation is like literally everything that I do. It's translating something from the object to the digital world, which is Photoshop in my case, to like translating that to canvas. And that's like the last part, which the painting part is like, all about execution and translation. So I really enjoy that. And I mean, that's probably why I put the slides of the digital design to the rendered design, the painted design, because I'm really proud of like being able to do that. And I think having something to look at is so fundamental to art. Like having, even if it's like something really small to like be inspired by and it live in the physical world, that's something that I do not take for granted. When my mentor, Enrico Riley, pulled me over to the window once, and when I was an intern in a crit, and was like, if you're making these really abstract designs, why don't you like base it off something like a building, a table, because something that has like a real physical presence, even if it's super abstract, will the human will psychologically be able to understand whatever you're doing better. If you're just like throwing things around, like it might not read as successfully. So when I'm studying these objects, it's like, I mean, it gives me the jumping off point. It gives me the ideas. Like it is true studying when I'm looking, and when I'm looking for things that I'm interested in, because sometimes I will make 3 paintings a day on my computer, and it'll take me months to make paintings. So it's like a real like, practice for my mind, I think, to make the paintings. And then the physical part happens later. But the most important part is like that studying, that interaction with whatever I'm studying. And then sometimes I even make paintings based off of my own paintings. And I think that's kind of fun too, because I forgot I could do that as an artist until recently. So now I am studying, just studying and then making drawings of my paintings and then making paintings of those drawings. It's like I could keep myself entertained for a really long time.
Right. Yeah, that's really iterative, the whole process of it. Do you feel like your work and like the different series of your work, even if you're sort of rethinking or redesigning previous pieces of yours, do you think they like really reflect that time and moment of your life? And if so, like, did your pandemic works just feel really distinct as compared to other works of yours?
That's a good question. I think when I first started making paintings again in the pandemic, it took a while, and it was really hard because there were so many other things happening in our country. So I was like, why am I going to make paintings about my life when, we have riots, we have Black Lives Matter happening. Like I should not be in my studio. That's not, but then also I should be home because we're in a pandemic. It was it's still a really complicated time in history. And so the last thing I want to do is like go make a beautiful painting. And when I did start making paintings, my sister Bailey was like really inspiring, because she basically dragged me off the couch to make the work because that show was happening and I needed to paint. And it was really healing to paint.
It looks like your video paused for just a little bit there. We'll give you a couple more seconds to see if your internet pops back on. Can you hear me now?
Oh yeah, sorry. It looks like my Wi-Fi is like, okay, I think my Wi-Fi reconnected. When did I cut off? Sorry. It just started doing the thing.
Yeah, I think it was right around when you were talking about your sister sort of helping jumpstart you off the couch, off of Netflix, and into the studio. You may have to repeat that one more time. I think you cut out when you were trying to answer again.
Yeah, it goes in and out. Okay, I think we're good now, because I know when it's not going because you're like frozen. But yeah, so my sister was a big influence to get us both working again, and we made really fun work. So a lot of the content and the colors really reflected that. And a lot of it was kind of experimental and building upon the other previous bodies of work. And then when I moved back to New Mexico, I stayed, and the pandemic and it was winter. I started making a little bit dreary work. So kind of like sadder colors. But then that was really sad. So then I started making brighter colored designs. So the work does totally reflect the time and the mood and what we're going through, or what maybe we've been through, mostly about me and my family. So it's, even though these pieces have a much larger context, there is like very intimate stories built within the construction and the concept of each work. So that is where maybe the like state of mind and the state of whatever else is going on around me makes its way in.
I think that's really cool because your work is it's like very abstract and pattern based, of course. But then it seems like each canvas is really rooted in a personalized memory or story or experience. And I'm wondering when we're able to access collections in person and do that kind of hands-on study, do you think about the stories and the memories that those artists imbued into those works? And like, how does that sort of shift holding those pieces and like reworking those pieces?
Yeah, it's kind of overwhelming to think about because it's like those objects hold so much story and time and labor and love and value that like sometimes I don't even think about it like that because I'm like, oh my gosh, I could never paint this.
Right.
So I mean, and why my work becomes so almost sterile sometimes, so rigid and like deconstructed and harsh. I don't know if anyone would even describe my work like that, but I do. It's because I am trying to remove my own physical hand from these objects and to recreate them in a way that I am almost like I am a guest to these objects as well. And it's my way of reinterpreting them without fully putting myself in there, but then also like to make myself interested in doing these works, I have a little narrative going on. So it's like, yeah, it's like society being an individual person, but also like knowing you exist in the greater picture of things.
Right. Yeah. Do you feel like there is a sort of distinct difference when you're studying like the Pueblo pots, for example, and that's not your direct ancestry or lineage, as opposed to going in and studying the Northern Cheyenne pieces and sort of like diving back into that culture?
No, totally. I mean, when I came here, I mean, that was like my biggest question is like, what should I be doing? Like, I mean, I do have Zuni ancestry, but I'm like studying Acoma, Pueblo pottery, and like all these in Laguna. And there's like this bit of obvious discomfort and awareness of that, but also like, I did feel like I was studying from these greats, and I was very aware of the artist and or the Pueblo represented by the works. And I try to be really, really aware and explicit with that. So if the works get shown, I want the information and the placard to read the exact source of that work, especially for any of the works I made at SAR. So yeah, I felt like, yeah, like I was saying, I'm like studying from like the masters of the masters, like these works in this collection, and also just Pueblo pottery in general is absolutely incredible. And I could never have that amount of skill, but I could try to paint something. And so now that I've entered, and when I was studying at IAIA, it was my first time diving into studying Cheyenne work. And it was really overwhelming at first because it was like, oh my gosh, the color, it's just so different. Just the design in general, like, you know, embodying all that was, yeah, I don't know if I could ever fully understand what I'm doing, but I felt like a whole new meaning, and I knew I would want to do this for a really long time. So yeah, it's definitely a different feeling. The work will have different feelings. The works I made here, like so rooted in this collection, and also just this landscape and the Southwest and the colors. My mom would be like, so Santa Fe, like it's so like of this area, and I'm like, no, not quite. But yeah, it's like so neutral because you walk around here and like every building kind of looks, you know, painted in the same shades. So it was interesting going from, you know, all of this monotonous color to like pink and bold blue. So that was really fun to start playing with because I'm learning so much with color as I make these pieces.
I think that's so fitting that SAR now has one of your pieces that drew so like strictly from the collection in the collection. There's something very like meta about that acquisition. So that's very cool.
Yeah, and I've never had to remake a painting, and I had to remake that 4 times. So I was like, so okay for not ever seeing it again.
Well, when I was working in the collection, I saw it every day. So
oh yeah, it's a big one too, and it's probably the larger pieces. which is cool because when I went to IAIA, some of the students had seen my painting in this collection. So having works kind of, you know, floating around Santa Fe for students to be able to see, that is so cool to me.
That's awesome. I was gonna ask, when studying the collections at IAIA, were you mostly drawing like from their more study historic collection, or were you also studying pieces from more contemporary 60s onward Northern Cheyenne artists who went through the school?
Yeah, I didn't really get to study within the collection, actually. That was like my last week. I finally got to like see a bit of the collection, but I mostly studied from online collections and just like jumped right on in. And IAIA has collected my work now, and I would love to go and spend a little bit more time with their collection, but they don't actually have that much Cheyenne beadwork in their collection at the moment. So yeah, I don't know if that's something they want to expand, but I'd definitely be interested. Roswell actually has a really large collection of Plains Indian objects. So that was really interesting to learn as I was there. And they have a part in their museum dedicated to the Plains Indian. So kind of interesting, like, and I didn't even study from that. So I feel a little bad.
I mean, it was in the pandemic, so.
Yeah, oh yeah, I didn't go anywhere. So I had a good excuse then.
Exactly. We do have one question that's just sort of about the technicality of your work. They said you have very beautiful work, but it's hard to tell what materials you're using in your very graphic paintings. And they're asking, what are the materials and how did you go about choosing them?
Yeah, so I stretch my own canvas and then just raw canvas, and I gesso a lot. So I'm not particular. I'm very particular about everything, but not so much gesso brands. But I do exclusively work in golden acrylics, and they're different matte mediums and different like chemical things you put in them. I don't know. I've got my little like concoctions I make, but I mostly work in like golden heavy body and also their fluid colors. And it is, tape, glue, and foam brushes. Yeah, so
right, for your dot paintings.
Yeah, exactly. And then my dot paintings are made with oil paint and with an acrylic base and Q-tips.
Very cool. Yeah, have you always, well, you were saying that you at SAR started using a projector, and then that ended up not being precise enough for, I guess, like translating. How much pre-planning and outlining goes into your works when it comes to either sketching or doing your Photoshop renderings?
Oh, I know exactly what the painting will look like before I touch the canvas, and I know exactly what I want it to look like. So when it comes to translating, it's a lot of like ruler, a lot of time with my ruler and the grid and just gridding it out sometimes. But the prep is all like digital, which is kind of crazy, and I could tweak any color and know exactly what I want. There's a few moments that things have changed when I actually make the painting, but for it, like execution mode.
That is cool that you allow for a little bit of play there once you actually are executing. As precise as you are, I feel like it's important to just, to have a bit of leniency just in case new inspiration hits right at the end.
Yeah, I mean, there was moments where like I didn't do the last step because I thought I was done, and that is so fun when that happens. But it is really fun just kind of like once we pull the last piece of tape or do the last dot, I mean, it's really nice because a lot of painters have no idea when they're done, and I know exactly when I'm done for the most part, which is one less thing to think about as an artist.
One more question, I guess, about your materials. You said that you were inspired by like the ochre kind of landscape in New Mexico. Did you ever try to dabble in more natural pigments or including those in your work, or do you strictly stick to those same paints that you trust and love?
I know I'm like too non-experimental for that, but I definitely have considered it. And I do really admire works with like natural pigments and dyes, and like cultivating from earth objects and whatnot. But oh gosh, I think like that would take me years just to like figure that out too. So yeah, I don't know. And also I'm starting to become more interested in these hard edged paintings and like figuring out what the next direction is. And I would love to start working more three-dimensionally. So we'll see. If I could maybe if there's like, I'm sure there's like something out here I could learn from with that, with the pigments.
That is exciting. There's no 3D work currently that you're going to be showing out in London with this upcoming gallery?
No, just some pretty large paintings. Yeah, not yet. Not ready. Not ready. I'm not ready for that world yet, but one day.
It's exciting that you have something new on the horizon though, and that there's always sort of shifts and changes in your practice.
Mm-hmm.
I guess just in terms of the Antique American Indian arts shows and organizations like that, why do you think it's important, not to sort of brag yourself and your presence here, but why do you think it is important to have living Native artists and knowledge keepers involved in those kinds of conversations and involved in those events?
I mean, yeah, it's so important to know that we exist in this contemporary world. We can look so varied. I mean, I'm a mixed mutt baby, and I'm making Indigenous art, and that voice is also important, just as important as like all these other artists making work in this crazy world. So yeah, I think being in conversation, especially in this Zoom webinar, with, you know, am I frozen?
You are frozen, yes. Okay, you're unfrozen.
Sorry, I don't know if when I froze.
Well, you froze again.
Yep.
Okay, I would say you can probably just start your answer from the beginning, and hopefully our viewers can piece together the
yeah,
gist. I
mean, I was just saying it's so important, being a Native woman, being a Native mixed woman, making contemporary artwork, and just making work, you know, as a human, and being in, you know, not labeled as anything but whatever I want to be. So having dialogues with you here at SAR, with Kim, I think these are worthwhile conversations because it shows, you know, all the different facets of what our people's art can look like. So yeah, it's important because we live and we work and we have lives and we have families and we have everything else going on too. So it's good to personify.
Definitely. And you're not just involved in terms of, I guess, like your printmaking, your painting. Aren't you also, you and your sisters, involved in a small up and coming fashion project as well? Is that still in the mix?
Still in the mix. That's why my sister moved out with me. We're co-founders of the lingerie line called Shy Natives, which will be launching eventually. But we're going to be working on that. It was really difficult we were trying to launch, and then the pandemic hit, and we still tried to launch. And then we decided, you know, this is not the time for this. So we stepped back, and now we're going to also get into that. So.
That's really awesome. I was going to ask if you're going to be involved in the SWIA fashion show up and coming in the future years with this line of yours.
Yeah, we did the 2019 fashion show, the last in-person one. Sorry, you cut out right before. I don't know if you'd mentioned that, but yeah, we did that, and it was so difficult though, just the amount of labor and labor that goes into creating 16 pieces. That was and I screen printed on a lot of the textiles, and my sister sewed them into little undergarments. And our show, I feel like, was so fun, but I think we're working more towards our online shop. So a little bit less runway, a little bit more everyday, human friendly.
Right, a bit more accessible.
Totally.
I think there's room for that.
Yeah, we have so many people that want to buy this product, so we just got to get launched, but when we're ready. So yeah, I'm bouncing like multiple lives and multiple different passions.
Right. Do you feel like your studio in Powake is really suited for and fitting for all the different mixed media projects you have going on?
I mean, I hope so. I've already ran out of space though. I mean, I have a really nice studio, but I'm just painting like taller than me. So it just fills up really quickly. So, but yeah, I would love to build a much larger studio one day. That's the goal on the property. But it's really nice because out there I have a lot of space. I have 2 acres of land and 2 big dogs. And my sister has her own sewing studio in one of the rooms, and that's also quite large. So we do have the setup in the space, and we're so lucky for that.
Right. I imagine you can't store that many paintings there. It's just also your house and your sister's studio.
I know. Well, yeah, that's an ongoing thing I'm trying to figure out. Oh, totally not temperature controlled either. Oh gosh, but that'll be one thing I figure out one day. Is this because there. I mean, I have probably 10-ish paintings that are complete, and I'm working on about 8 more right now. And it's getting busy. It's getting busy and full.
That sounds a little hectic, but also exciting.
It's really exciting.
Speaking of all of the work that you've been producing and the different museums that you're showing in, galleries you're showing in, what advice would you give to new collectors of contemporary Native art?
I mean, buy work, support Indigenous artists, support young ones, even younger than me, ones that are fresh out of college, trying to figure it out. That made all the difference, especially when quite a few of my paintings were bought from SAR when I was a little baby artist, because I feel like that one collector who I'm still really good friends with, I mean, that little does she know, like really fueled like my ability, not my abilities, but like I knew it was feasible. Like I can do this, I could make this my job. And even though the path is unpaved, I can figure it out because I know that there are people that are interested in my work. And so, yeah, I think that my advice is, collect work that you're interested in. Just don't only collect, the big names that everyone wants. I mean, there's so many talented artists out there, so many talented people of color artists that are worth, a spot in your collection. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm trying to figure out it too. So yeah.
No, I think that's an amazing point, especially coming into this weekend with a lot of shopping that's going to be going on at all of the events throughout Santa Fe. I think to just have that in the back of your mind when you're wandering the booths.
And I think collecting art, I mean, it reminds you of a time and a space. I just did an art trade with a friend at a garage sale, and a lot of people at the garage sale, strangers, were like, "That's hideous." And I was like, "I love it." I got this like crazy, like junky art, and like it's literally like junk debris, but for me, it's like really special, and it holds meaning and power. And most of my art in my home is Native artists and young Native artists, and artists that are in their MFA, artists that are in high school. Like I think it is really cool to see also their progression, because my art from SAR has evolved into what I'm doing now. It's going to continue to evolve. So collecting, like, as the artist grows, can be so valuable to the artist and also the collector, I would imagine.
I would think so too. I think that's a really great point. Yeah, because you can see all the sort of transitions in terms of technique or style or influence.
And so many people go from I'm just thinking my mentor who did really minimal work to now he's drawing and painting very very rendered paintings, and then he did really abstract work inspired by his 2-year-old. So it's just following their life as they live as an artist is so huge, and that's something I'm interested in doing myself.
Right. Well, I guess one last question before we wrap up here is if you're going to be hanging out in Santa Fe this coming weekend for all the Native arts events, cultural events, and if so, what you're most excited to do or see or experience this weekend.
I'm super excited for the Buffalo Thunder Pathway show. I have so many friends over that way doing that like a little market, or like a big market. There's a lot of booths. So I'm super excited about that. But yeah, I think I'm mostly gonna be hiding. It's scary. There's so many people here already. And yeah, I'll probably be hiding and painting and, you know, baking maybe. But maybe a little bit, we'll see. How about you, Emily? What are you looking forward to real quick?
Yeah, no, I actually have a friend, my college roommate from school in the Bay, actually. She's going to be walking in the Native Fashion Show on Sunday. So I've never gotten to see it before, and this is her first like foray into modeling. So I'm really excited for her and really excited to just catch up, and such an exciting, yeah, like generative, creative space. I think.
Are you going to support?
I'm definitely going to support. Yeah.
My baby sister Bailey modeled for us in the show, and that was really fun. Just, I mean, it's like, I mean, I must say those models are so nervous, especially when they're walking out in lingerie, I might add. But yeah, it's like really nerve-wracking back there. So I'm glad you're going to show your support. I'm sure it's a lot of fun though. So it'll be really beautiful to see.
Yeah, I hope so. All right, well, thank you again for chatting with me, for sharing all of the work that you've been creating. And I hope to see you in Santa Fe this weekend when you're not hiding or baking. So just a reminder for our viewers who are based in Santa Fe, you should definitely check out the IAIA show in person this week. And then if you're watching from afar, you can still access their online show on their website. And then again, if you'd like to stay involved with future SAR events and programs just like this one, you can consider signing up for our virtual membership. And the link is still in the chat, and it's always up on our website as well. So with that, I would just like to say thank you to everyone who's watching. Thanks to Kim Martindale and his team for partnering with SAR to put on this program. And especially thank you to Jordan for such a beautiful presentation.
Thank you so much, Emily, and everyone else involved. This was really fun. A good little start to this crazy weekend we're all about to have.
I think so. Yes. All right. Well, we all hope to see you at our next SAR event.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, Emily, hi. How do we get out of here? Cool.